Hi everyone, today we're talking about how to create a table from equations with two variables. As a reminder, you do not need to write down everything that we'll cover in this video, but be sure to jot down important information and at least one example of each type of problem that we'll cover. Also remember that you can pause to jot down important notes, rewind to view information again, and fast forward if you think you already got it. Be careful, make sure you don't fast forward too much that you end up missing out on something important. So let's first review our independent and dependent variables because those are very important for today's lesson. As a reminder, independent variables are going to cause a change in your dependent variable. So cause and then effect, independent variable, then dependent variable. Your dependent variable is called a dependent variable because it depends on what's happening with the independent variable before it can make any changes. So it's like an if-then statement. When we're talking about variables, x is always used as your independent variable, and it's going to change y, your dependent variable. So pretty easy to remember. It's in alphabetical order. X has to happen first before it can cause a change in y. So it's kind of like your input and your output. Make sure you jot this down in your notes, especially this new bit about x changing y before we move on. Here's an example of a table that you are going to now have to make sense out of and complete when given your equation or your rule. We're going to work on this one together. So again, you have to complete this table and they've given you this rule. So this rule says that y's value is going to be 1/4 of x's value plus 1. They've given you all these x values. So all you have to do is replace the x with a 4 each time, with an 8 another time, and with a 12 a different time. Okay? So really this y here is equal to 1/4 times 4 plus 1. This y value here is equal to 1/4 times 8 now plus 1. And this y value is equal to 1/4 times, instead of x, it's 12 plus 1. Okay? The only thing you want to be aware of now is your x's. I would change them to the dots so that you know that it's multiplication and not the variable x. So again, all we did was we just took these numbers, these x values, and we replaced it with x in the equation. Everything else was exactly the same. And we know there's an invisible multiplication here because there's no sign next to them. So if there's no sign between the coefficient and the variable, you can assume that it's a multiplication. Okay? So now we just have to follow our order of operations and solve these. Order of operations tells us we're going to work on groupings first, no groupings, then exponents, no exponents, and then we're going to either multiply or divide whatever comes first. Then we add or subtract whatever comes first. So in all of these, we're going to first work on the multiplication. Then when we're done with the multiplication, we're going to do that addition at the end, according to our order of operations. 1/4 times 4th is the first multiplication. This looks very difficult, but if you put the 4 as your numerator and your 1 as a denominator, you'll see that it's 1 times 4 on the top and 1 times 4 on the bottom. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So it's kind of like these two cancel out and you're just left with your 1's. Then we're going to add the 1 at the end. For 1/4 times 8, it's the same thing, 8 over 1. So we get an 8 on top and a 4 on the bottom. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So 1/4 of 8 is 2. Then we're going to add the 1 at the end. And lastly, we have 1/4 times 12 over 1. 12 times 1 is 12. 4 times 1 is 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So 1/4 of 12 is 3. And at the end, each of these products, the answer to your multiplication, is going to add 1. So it's going to be increased by 1. So then that means we have 2 here, 3 here, and 4 here. They are each 1 away from each other because it was a plus 1 at the end. So those are your answers. And there you go. So all we did was we took the x values that they gave us, we replaced it inside of that rule. Remember, x is the independent variable, so that's what's going to cause your y, your dependent variable, to change. So the x had some multiplication and addition done to it so that it would change the dependent variable of y. So it goes independent, then dependent, I, and then d. The x is going to change the y value. Okay, we're going to try one last problem. Again, you have to complete the table using that given rule. So go ahead and pause the video and try it on your own first. All right, in this case, they're giving us the y. So they're giving us the dependent variable. So what happens at the end? So we're going to have to work backwards, okay? Just like before, though, you're going to replace your y with that value. So instead of y equals x plus 3, you're going to have 4 equals x plus 3. This one, same thing. Instead of y equals x plus 3, y is 8, so 8 equals x plus 3. And this one is 5 equals x plus 3. Okay? So we're looking for an x value that's added to 3 and will equal 4. You could kind of guess the answer, or you could use your one-step equation to solve that. 4 equals x plus 3. This is a plus 3, so we're going to subtract 3 on both sides to keep that scale even. I get x left over on the right-hand side, and 4 minus 3 is 1, so x equals 1 here. For the next one, 8 equals x plus 3. Plus 3, the opposite is subtract 3, both sides, that cancels, so we get x equals 5 for this one. And then the last one, 5 equals x plus 3. I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides, and then I would get x equals 2. Okay, so you can go back and replace it to double check. If x equals 1, it would be 1 plus 3 equals 4. Correct. If x equals 5, 5 plus 3 equals 8. Correct. And if x equals 2, 2 plus 3 will equal to 5. Correct. So this x value is going to be placed inside the rule, and it's going to change this y value here. So it looks like all these x values would add 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. 5 plus 3, 8. 2 plus 3, 5. So it's a good way for you to check that. Okay, so you're always going to replace whatever values they give you into the rule in order to find out the other value. Just be careful which one is independent and which one's dependent. If they give you the dependent like they did this time, you will have to work backwards to kind of work your way back to the cause or the independent. Let me know if you have any questions as you work on these, and I'll see you in class.